Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about 2 more days. We're going to talk about 2 more days, and we are going to answer a question that has come in repeatedly all day today once the news broke. And if you missed the news, 4 days has turned into 6. The pause was successfully extended. So that has occurred. Looks like it's going to hold. At least right now, that's what it looks like. There are people who are working to extend it further, and there are people who are working to turn it into a more permanent thing with a framework to move forward. We'll see how that works out. The question that came in was, I understand why the Palestinian side agreed to this, but why did Israel? A number of reasons, probably, all working together. The first is the obvious. They want their people back, and this is a relatively safe way to do it. So that definitely factors into it. The other is they might be using it to try to figure out how to get out. We talked about it before the ground offensive started. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to know what the plan to exit is. If you're an American, you are very familiar with this because the U.S. almost never has a plan to leave, and it causes issues. So they might be trying to use this time to figure that out. The other thing is it's being overshadowed. The other motivating reason is being overshadowed, but it probably has something to do with it as well. Prior to the ground offensive starting, people asked, what's it going to look like? Fallujah. It's going to look like the Second Battle of Fallujah. It's the only thing it can look like. It looks like the Second Battle of Fallujah. And if you don't know, you're not familiar with it, that was the worst battle in the entire war in Iraq for the U.S. And that's what it's like. The ground offensive didn't start right away. It started towards the end of October, and there's been a few days of pause since it started. You're looking at roughly 3 weeks of it being active, 3 to 4. The Second Battle of Fallujah was 6 to 7 weeks. Israel has lost almost as many as the U.S. did in that period. That type of fighting, as we talked about, it's the worst. It's the worst for everybody. For the soldier, for the civilian, it is the worst for everybody. The losses on the Israeli side, they're obviously being overshadowed by the civilian losses. People aren't really talking about them. But it is on par with Fallujah. In fact, it seems to be a little bit worse. The rhetoric and the statements that have come out from the politicians are kind of indicating that they want the military to go south next and move south. I would imagine that there are a whole bunch of military commanders who are hoping that the pause gets extended. If they move south, it's going to get worse. We have talked about it in relationship to different conflicts. I know we talked about it in regards to Ukraine. Generally speaking, it is wise to leave your opposition a way out. You have to leave them a way to withdraw. There is nowhere for the Palestinian forces to go. So if the Israelis move south, the Palestinian forces will put up incredibly stiff resistance because they don't have a choice. There's nothing that they can do. They can't leave. And the objective that Israel has set is, the total destruction of that organization. They're going to read that as them as individuals. They are going to fight, and it will be very stiff fighting. So between those statements and that rhetoric and how things have progressed so far, I would imagine that there are at least a few military commanders who are kind of like, maybe we should figure something else out. But I don't know if they're going to be listened to. Most times in this kind of situation, they aren't. They're kind of ignored. But those seem to be the most likely reasons. And there's also a bit of international politics at play. As long as the Palestinian forces are willing to return people for peace, if Israel goes ahead with its ground offensive while that's on the table, the outrage that is all over the place, it's going to be amplified, and they know that. That may have something to do with it too. Make no mistake about it, the primary reason is probably this is a way to get these people back. And from the Israeli point of view, they have the initiative. So after the pause, if they chose, they could restart everything. It's not good to have your tempo disrupted, but it's also not necessarily something that would derail an entire operation, especially one that has to be slow moving anyway. So that's why Israel would agree to it. I feel like there is an expectation that both sides have of the other, that the other is totally unreasonable. I don't know that that's the case. I know that due to the fighting and due to everything that has happened, everybody has their reason for saying the other side is completely unreasonable. I get that. But also remember that this is something that oftentimes is decided by committees. And as long as there is one person on that committee trying to voice reason, it'll often win out. So the fact that Israel agreed to this, it shouldn't be a surprise. Especially when they maintain the option of just restarting it after the exchanges are over. But that's where we're at right now. Hopefully, those people working on a more permanent framework are successful. Blessed are the peacemakers type of thing. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.